Welcome to the Attack Action Podcast,
where we talk about friendship, fun times, and most importantly, flesh and blood. Here are your hosts, Taylor and Isaac.
Hello, Attactioneers, and my co-host Isaac. How's it going, dude?
Great. I'm very excited about our topic today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so on today's episode, we're going to be talking about draft, part 1.
Yep. We're going to break down the basics and talk about, the structure, how to strategize what you're looking for. And then in part 2 to come, we're going to really get into the nitty gritty and very specific, archetypes and things like that.
Totally. High level draft so that you can win nationals. Also, Shasta, your dog, has waited...
Hasn't had water in hours.
An obscene amount of time to start drinking water once we hit record. Could have done it at any point.
It's never just a couple sips either. They really got to camel up when they go for it.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny. So when I show up we're at Isaac's house today recording, and every time I show up, she gets really excited. Isaac's dog, Shasta, she gets really pumped to see me. She whines and she makes funny noises and stuff, but doesn't really like to be petted. But then after some of those feelings wane, she just goes and eats all of her food just in case I'm here for the food or, just if there's a resource, she's just got to get rid of it.
You don't want to go on a walk or take a nap and then Taylor's eat all your fucking dog food again,
I know, it makes total sense, and I don't blame her. It's just funny, like clockwork,
Just camel it all up.
Totally. So what have you been up to, dude?
Not a lot. Honestly, I've been taking a bit of a break from competitive flesh and blood, but really enjoying some casual games here and there. Just kind of getting back to the love of the game and out of the kind of the grind or frustrations, if you will. So that's been pretty nice. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The semester at job number 1 that I have, college professor, that is winding down. We're in our finals week now. And as of yesterday, I did not have a ton of panic emails. But I went to bed around 10 p.m. So I would assume that I probably, once I was in bed, got flooded with emails from the hours of 10 p.m. to midnight as they scrambled to finish their final and maybe got surprise sick or something like that. So, so that's going on. And so I have some free time coming up here right before the summer session starts and I start teaching summer.
Nice.
Yeah. So
nice. Oh, I did complete my fire cert and was kind of thinking about doing something with that, but I need something that pays, so that's about where we got there.
Nice.
It's been a real Humboldt spring too. It'll be hailing and then sunny and warm the next hour. So, scheduling outside things has been a little bit, hit or miss. You're taking a risk there.
Yeah, I pulled up to your house, full blaring sun, had my coat on, was like, this is a mistake, took it off instantly. And now, as we're recording, it's a storm is about to happen outside. It's about to dump rain. So... very, just classic Pacific Northwest stuff.
Yep.
All the interesting things people are here for, right?
Well, we'll have more in the listener mail section coming up too.
Yeah,
that's
totally
what you're here for.
First off, I want to say thank you for joining us on our podcast. If this is your first one, you're in for a real treat. If this is your 100th one, joke's on you. We've only done 42 episodes. So unless you're listening to them twice,
it's
impossible.
Case, jokes back on us.
Yeah, jokes back on us.
100th one.
Yeah. Well, then it's not even made it to 100, so re-jokes back on you. Ha. But what I wanted to say is if you find at all our content enjoyable or meaningful to you, we would really love your support. And the best ways for you to do that is first, join our Patreon. $4 a month gets you access to the Discord and a few other perks. It's just a really great, growing, and thriving community of people. I'm like surprised every day that we have a private Discord with folks who listen to our podcast and that give us money and hang out and talk with one another and have a great time like every day. So appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And then the other ways you can support us is by reviewing and subscribing to us on our many social platforms. Just subscribe to them all. Any of them that give reviews, like Spotify or iTunes, or thumbs upping videos, leaving comments on YouTube. All of those things really help us out. That's really great. And then lastly, just tell a friend, just be like, yo, bro, you play Flesh and Blood. You got to listen to these dudes in middle of nowhere, California. They're so cool.
How do they know what's up? But they do.
Yeah, to listen to their podcast. So, yeah. So those are the ways you can support us, and it means a lot at wherever you're at, doing whatever you can. So thank you in advance.
If you're at the Pro Tour and see Yuki or Zane also, you could, maybe lose that match. You're going to anyway. So that would, help us out as well.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so before we get into the Pro Tour stuff, we do have a bit of news that supersedes the Pro Tour. How about you take us through that there, Isaac?
Totally. Well, it actually is other Pro Tour news. They have announced the location and dates for the second Pro Tour. It's going to be held in Lille, France, the weekend of August 26th through the 28th. So now if you're trying to qualify in these very soon upcoming events, you'll have an idea of, or you'll know when that is happening. So be able to, plan for that now.
Also, I think LSS hates North American teachers because not only is Pro Tour 1 the weekend of finals for me, but Pro Tour 2 is the start of the fall semester. So I don't know what to do. It's okay. It's just a sign from them. They just don't want me to be a pro player, especially when they changed my ELO to where I was in the top 100 and then swiftly took it away hours later. It was a whirlwind of...
And probably cackled the whole while.
Yeah, totally.
Knowing what they were doing to people.
Suck it, Taylor.
Watch Twitter burn.
All right, we'll put it back to the way we found it. Also, so speaking of Pro Tours, the Pro Tour is this weekend. So we're recording on a Tuesday before the Pro Tour. So it's very exciting. The Players Banquet is on Thursday. Tyler Horspool had like a hilarious tweet. He's like been pretty depressed about the meta and like what deck to play. And he tweeted the other day like, well, at least there's still the Players Banquet on Thursday. Which sounds like quite a huge blast. Also, Rob and Tarek are flying first class. Did you know that?
Twitter news?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, your Twitter update.
Yeah, dude.
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
Are they getting served silver platters of Flesh and Blood Majestics?
It seemed like it. Rob was cracking packs as they're on the flight,
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good for them.
Totally. Baller move. So what, Isaac, are your Pro Tour predictions?
I predict that Starvo will win the tournament. I know, shocker.
Yeah, hot take.
I've just... A lot of what I've heard is that testing has not been going great, and everybody's like, well, shit, should we all just play Starvo, I've heard that from like several testing groups and people, unfortunately. Tarek Patel's on chain. A lot of people on chain. It's a very strong deck, but that's my pick, Starvo.
Nice.
What do you think?
Who do you think is going to win? Or give me Not maybe your top one person. Give me your top 3 people you think potentially could win it. That are like...
I don't know. I don't even personally know anybody who's playing Starvo.
Well...
I'm going to back off of that one because I don't know. One interesting thing, though, that I have noticed is there are a lot of pros who would really like to win this thing who are not playing Starvo on principle.
Nice.
Which I thought was like pretty, because, like Chain's the best deck in the Monarch meta, obviously, right? And it's like kind of everybody plays Chain, except Tyler, obviously, and won the whole thing. But it just seemed like this time was maybe a little bit different, and people were like, or not everybody, some people were like, I don't really want to play Starvo. So while they're trying their hardest, they're trying their hardest around not playing that deck, which is like interesting at a top tier, you really want to win situation.
Yeah.
But.
So your top 3 people who are going to win. The original question.
Yuki Lee Bender.
Boom. Locking it in.
Zane, the insane Chain Pain Johnson.
Sweet.
And let's go with Tommy Fresh.
I don't know.
He's not playing in the Pro
I think
Quest,
he's in the calling.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, those are my picks.
Nice. Really prepared.
I'm sorry. I was not prepared for that question. I have no idea. You got some picks for us?
Yeah. See, this is what happens when I get you off the cuff. Yeah. So I'm also going to pick Yuki, Canadian national champ, friend of the pod, a Terminator on the Flesh and Blood pitch. Then I'm also going to pick also friend of the pod, Hayden Dale, Australia national champ. Extremely handsome, taller than you think he is, and charming to boot.
These are all attributes that win you Pro Tours.
Totally. Dude, when a tall dude sits down across from you, it is kind of scary. And then when they're really nice, you're like, dang, dude, this guy's really nice,
And then they're like funnier than you are,
Totally. And then you forget to freaking side in your shit, and then you lose,
Yeah.
So it's a strategy.
Kind of blushing.
Yeah. Then my third pick is, I think I'm going to have to go with Matt Rogers on this one. The, original GOAT of Flesh and Blood, a safe pick. He'll be hanging out with whatever mid-range deck he's figured out that he can play into the meta. So those are my picks.
Nice.
Totally. No Americans.
I'm going to pick an American since I can't pick Tommy Fresh.
You already picked. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Michael Fang.
Oh, sweet.
Because that dude is a very intelligent player and just like a real pleasure to play the game with. Which I know has nothing to do with placement. But, just very, very talented guy that, works hard to be a master at his craft. As are many of these people going.
Yeah, totally.
Not take anything from anybody else, but
it's going to be very exciting for sure. Super, super exciting.
So everybody check out what's it on Channel Fireball Twitch this weekend?
Yeah, I believe so. Should be a ton of fun. It's going to be the, most exciting Flesh and Blood coverage ever, hopefully, right? That's the idea.
I have to watch it afterwards because I have like real world plans, which is pretty stupid. I should have seen this coming and been like, totally. I'm unavailable that weekend. Let's do it a different weekend.
Totally. I made zero plans this weekend.
It's too late for me.
In preparation for this moment.
I'll be in our Discord though and watching it on my phone while someone's talking to me. Just kidding.
That's a great guy. Those are great baby names. Have you thought of Bolton? That's a cool name, right?
Labaya, that's pretty.
Starvo, it's a real hero name. Or villain, depending on how you feel. Yeah, totally. Have you ever considered naming your son Showstopper? Anyway, okay. Announcements. So we have been. You like that? Good pivot, huh? Excellent segue.
That's a smooth segue there. Bullet point.
Yeah. So we're doing a contest here. So we have been gifted some of the sweet Herald of Rebirths and playmats from LSS for the Content Creator Appreciation Kit, which they need a pithier title for that.
You nailed it, though. Great job.
Thanks. So this is what we're doing. Pay attention very closely. We are going to give away a full play set of the promos, so reds, yellows, and blues, 3 of each, and a playmat to anybody who wins our contest. The contest is as follows. You shall make a 15 to 30 second commercial spot. So we're thinking radio commercial, not infomercial. The winner will receive the goodies and we will air your commercial on the podcast. The commercial must be flesh and blood related, whether that's inside jokes about players, but keep it nice, lore in the world of Wraith, cards, history, etc. It's got to be flesh and blood related. And then you have until May 25th. We'll have another podcast at the end of the month with friend of the show, aforementioned Tommy Fresh from Fresh and Buds. So we'll have an interview with him and we will air the promo on that podcast. So you have until May 25th to get us that. The way you can send that is in an email, theattackactionpodcast@gmail.com with a 30-second commercial. It should be small enough to fit in an email. You can send that as a voice memo on your phone. So take a voice memo, and there are a number of different free recording software that you can have access to. Audacity is one of those. If you just do a Google search, you'll be able to figure it out. Be creative and make our choices hard.
Totally. Yep. So this is just an audio file. I can't wait to hear what you guys come up with. Like we were talking about this earlier, right? And you could be trying to promote your Airbnb in Volcor.
Yep.
Like during the uprising, it's fine. Still come and stay, and or whatever. Or like, Reinar's retired and now he's a Scabskin leather salesman and he's hawking these shoes or whatever. Like
snow cones from Oldham. Whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So whatever you got, give it to us. We can't wait to hear it. And it will be aired on the podcast. So totally cool. Okay. So you have until May 25th. Email us, theattackactionpodcast@gmail.com. Also in announcements, if you have not listened to our previous episode, we are doing a discount for
There's a sale.
There's a sale. Flesh and Blood singles at FABTCG.co. So in the show notes, there's an affiliate link, and it says affiliate link. Click on it. Shop for your singles at Fab Foundry. Then at checkout, you're going to use Attack Action 10. You'll get 10% off your order, and we get double the kickback from that. So that's another great way to support us. So that's for the whole month of May. Get those things you haven't been getting. Isaac just did a purchase where he's got a bunch of the illusionist cards, not a light illusionist, in preparation for the uprising set. So that's a great idea on how to use that promo code and hook us up and hook yourself up and all of that.
Totally. Free fast shipping too, or maybe over a certain dollar amount. But yeah, it's a great store.
Great store, great service, great person. If you have no idea what we're talking about, go listen to episode 41, our interview with Onnit. It's really great. Great person. Pillar of the community, especially here in the Pacific Northwest.
Shout outs.
Oh my goodness. Shout
outs.
Yeah. Okay. Big shout out to our boy, Colin, the people's champ. He just did a marathon of commentating to Flesh and Blood down at his local scene in SoCal. We will link that whole event in the show notes. I'll make a note of that right now. So just huge shout out to him.
Yeah, they did a great job, and the whole production was excellent.
Yeah, it really was.
The gameplay, the commentary, the coverage, the cameras, like everything just went like super smoothly, and it was pretty fun to watch. Some high level games in the the current meta.
Yeah, I really liked it. Colin did a great job. He's such a charming dude. That's why he's our friend, and that's why he's on the reaction step.
Totally. I told him I laughed out loud a few times. So,
yeah.
Great job.
Totally great job.
Okay, before we get into the main topic, right, we do have some listener mail.
Totally. So this question is from our Discord. Check it out. We got a whole channel for questions. This comes from Thor Mike. He says, question for Taylor. How's your grass doing? Are you a straight line guy or a diagonal line guy? Second question for Isaac. How's your water collection system doing? I saw a kick-ass one the other day if you want to see the quote-unquote diagram. Sorry for the not fab related LOL. Totally cool. We take non-fab related questions here on the Attack Action Podcast. Thor Mike. Okay, my grass is struggling because it's been raining so much. It is getting quite long and it's too wet to mow, so I haven't been mowing it. So it's getting a little out of hand. I am a oval mower. I have many obstacles in the lawn. Trees, piles of, what do you call it when you prune a fruit tree? Prunings? Clippings?
Burn piles?
Burn piles. Yeah. I got stuff I got to mow around. Gardens.
So you do like circles around the obstacles.
Yeah, totally. Or like
outwards.
figure eights or whatever.
Oh, nice.
So now I do it in like fourths or quarters, I guess. So I'll do 1 quarter and I just like basically go in like a rectangle, I guess, and then move on to the next one, etc., etc. There's a whole technique, and I've really chopped my time down from like over 2 hours to like under an hour and a half to do the whole thing.
Nice.
Efficient.
Totally. Just getting those reps in.
Yeah, totally. I'm a Terminator when it comes to lawn mowing.
PR again. You come inside, announce to your wife. Another PR today.
Another PR. Yeah, totally. Isaac, water catchment. Tell me about it, baby.
Great. It's been raining here, and all of my tanks are full as of yesterday. So we're set for the summer, assuming it rains next year. But just fucking good to go. I had a little like fire mishap that poked a couple holes in my pump line with fire, but that was kind of also like a sprinkler system at the time, so that was pretty nice. And then repaired it, and we're done. We're good. And it's like, in January when you're like down, like the spring's not running, it's not raining, you're like using your water instead of storing it up. You're like, well, it's just kind of like subconsciously stressful. I was like, well, I guess if I just run out of water, I'll like go live in Tahoe starting in August or something. I was like, I don't know what, but I'll figure it out. But anyway, now I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it's a pretty great story, which we don't have to tell on the pod. We've already spent 20 minutes of BS. Should we get into this draft podcast?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, sweet. Also, good water catchment update. Thank you.
We met our BS quota.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so in this episode is part 1 of draft. So this is going to be kind of the base level stuff you need to know about draft. So if you're like, I've drafted 400 times, I don't need to listen to this. Totally fine. Thanks for listening. Or maybe you're like, maybe there's something I will learn. Or I just love these guys. They could talk about whatever. Water catchment and mowing, and I would listen to it. So here we go. So overview of what draft is in Flesh and Blood and what you like need to expect. So first off, draft is way different than other parts of Flesh and Blood because it's kind of like, I like to think of it as a duel game. So You have to draft your cards at the table, and that in itself is a game with many crucial decisions. And then you have to play multiple games after you made a bunch of crucial decisions. So it's a game within the game.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I really enjoyed draft. Is my favorite format now. I've really changed my tune there.
Wow.
But just because it's
Favorite format.
totally, it's just because it's a different deck building puzzle every time.
Yeah.
You know, I used to really like CC because it's like the ultimate puzzle. But then like sometimes metas get a little stagnant or like, you know, are a bit solved or whatever. And it's probably in those times when I prefer draft, because I'm like, every time you draft, everybody is just on even ground and it's a totally unique puzzle. You've never been here before.
Yeah.
And it makes it really interesting.
Yeah, and it's a really dynamic format because depending on who the other 7 people are at the table really changes how the draft goes, you know, and what packs are opened, or, you know, what's in those packs, etc. So it's just really dynamic and is never really the same.
Yeah, and you bring up the people at the table do make it really interesting, because sometimes, you know, if you're drafting with really skilled players, it's almost like sometimes the drafting can be a bit easier, you know?
Yeah.
But then the play can be quite a lot harder.
Right.
Where sometimes the inverse is true, right? Where like you need to kind of play it a bit safer if, you know, you're sitting at the table with a bunch of unknowns or maybe newer players or whatever, or people that are really biased. And, you know, you maybe need to be a bit adaptable, flexible, play it kind of safe. But then sometimes your games can go a bit easier if you're just a more experienced player. So it's just really wild, the degrees of interaction that go on there.
Totally. That's what it makes it one of the best formats. I, as well, love draft, and still to this day will draft any of the Flesh and Blood sets. They're all, I think, really great. Arcane Rising gets a bad rap in the community, but as we just found out, like drafting it again really recently, it's a great format, actually. It just requires your brain to think differently. And now that we've had, I think having had Tales of Aria as kind of a real change, right? So getting talents and then getting Tales of Aria, where you have 3 heroes and all these different things to kind of manage and think about. Drafting Arcane Rising seemed, you know, reasonable and was actually really great. There's like a lot of really cool interactions between the cards. They're just, you know, slightly off from other sets.
Yep. No, yeah, I really loved it. And I think some of the rap it gets is, I think Arcane Rising Sealed is not very good. But as far as limited go, you know, Sealed and Draft are quite a bit different. You know, like a lot of people knock, you know, Aria Sealed because it's a bit unbalanced, which is a totally valid point. But Draft itself is a completely different beast and like gets rid of any of that sealed, you know, imbalance or weirdness.
Right.
So we're just talking about draft here.
Yeah. So drafting, for those of you who are like, well, what is it? I've never done it before. So basically, you have 8 players sit around a table and you open one whole box of a standalone draftable set of Flesh and Blood. Each player gets 3 packs, and then you all will open one of your 3 packs at the same time, take out the token, and then you'll have 15 cards. You're going to pick one of those 15 cards and then pass the rest of them to typically the player on your left. And then everybody else does the same. Picks a card, passes the rest to the player on their left. Then you repeat that. So you pick a card, then you pass those cards to the next to the player on your left again, etc., until all cards are picked. Then you're going to open up your second pack, do the same thing, but you pass them the opposite direction. So we pass left, pack 1. So we're passing right in pack 2. Pick all the cards until they're gone. and then we repeat in pack 3, picking a card and passing again to our left. So you will pass to one player twice, and that player will pass to you once, which is important to remember that when we get down to talking about signals and that sort of thing. So you send twice as many signals as you, I guess you send the same amount actually, but you send twice as many to one person as you do another person.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a couple things. So you're picking cards in secret, right? And placing them face down in front of you.
Yep.
And will not get to look at them again until you're done picking that pack. Because there are 15 cards in a pack and 8 players at the table, you will receive that pack that you started with back around to you, missing half its cards again.
Yeah.
And get to see what was left in it, what's been picked, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great thing to remember is knowing how many times you will see each pack, right? So you'll get the most cards out of pack 1, right? How's that math work? I didn't even think about this before we started.
The most cards out of pack 1?
Yeah, or do you get...
No, you'll get the same amount out of every pack.
Oh, yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah.
You're correct. Yeah.
Or... Yeah, anyway.
There is some math there. Anyway, so that's the kind of basic overview of what draft is. And then we're going to move into kind of etiquette for drafting. We're going to talk about what being open means, how to stay open, our thoughts on how you read what is open, and then like receiving and sending signals.
Yep. And just a couple last rules
Yeah,
here.
totally.
Tokens are free.
Yeah.
So your hero's starting token weapon and the hero card, you don't have to draft those. But any equipment, you do need to draft as it's passed.
Right.
So at the end of 3 packs, you'll have 45 cards total to make your minimum 30 card deck.
Yeah.
Some of those cards you drafted might be equipment, though. So then those would start out on the board.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. And equipment is super vital, but we'll get to that. So first, so now we know what draft is. Let's talk about how to act during a draft. So first thing is just being super clear about where cards go that you've picked. Cards that you're passing to a player need to be really clear, and cards you're receiving from a player are being really clear. At our locals, we try to uphold as much from what we learned at nationals. So we always do zone drafting. I don't know if this is a thing for everywhere, but there's only 3 zones, right? So cards, or I guess you could technically call it 4. So cards you've picked, cards you've passed, and cards you're receiving, and then any cards in your hand. So like cards in your hand stay there until the cards you've passed leave, right? So you can never, the idea is to keep piles from stacking up at one player, and then that they like get lost in which pack is supposed to come next or whatever.
Yeah, you forget which order they came in, which ones they picked or whatever. So if you're passing to your left and there's a pile of cards to your left that you have set on the table, passed to the person on your left, they're not ready and haven't picked it up yet. You made your next pick and are ready to pass again. You just sit and wait and hold the cards in your hand until they pick it up. There's no pile there. That zone's clear.
Yep.
And then you then pass the next pile. And it just makes everything really clear.
Yep.
You can also, depending on the competition level, but if every time you are past cards, you count them, it makes it really easy to not, because sometimes in a casual event, you'll have somebody who doesn't know if they picked out of a pile or whatever, and then everything gets really muddled up. So you just start with 15, pass. Next one should have 14, and you just count them. Good.
Yep.
And then move along. And
Yeah.
It just keeps everything really functional.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that's a great tip for that, for sure. So then let's talk about table talk. So this is kind of a gray area depending on who you're playing with. Like when it's just the Battle Bros hanging out, having some beverages, we talk some trash and, we talk about all kinds of stuff. Maybe our mind wanders, etc. We complain about the packs. We like send hints to each other like, "Woo, spicy pack." There's a lot of good stuff in there. But at some places, maybe those kind of things are frowned upon, right? So, try not to talk about specific cards or calling other players out during the draft. Like, "Hey, you need to like go faster." Or, "Ooh, I know you picked that card that I passed you," those sort of things.
I was going to clarify. Like when we're just playing casually, we'll say stuff like, "Oh, there's a really lucky Kano player here."
Yeah.
Or a really powerful wizard cards
Yeah.
going. Or like, "I can't believe we're still seeing these." But we still don't ever reference like specific cards or strategies. It's just like any information you could give away. And I think that's a good point. Just when in doubt, don't give any information away.
Right.
Because it can like ruin the experience. It could ruin the game. It could ruin somebody's strategy. It's just like, don't comment on things if you don't know. You know?
And if you are getting excited or having a lot of fun, just say that, like, "Wow, this is exciting." Or, "Boy, I'm having a lot of fun." Maybe you sound sarcastic, but at least you're not going like, "Wow, great pack. It had so many good red cards." That would be probably like not good.
Or, "I hate to pass this Terra Sunder, but I can't afford to hate draft it." So then 2 players down know that whatever.
Yeah, totally. So kind of just trying to uphold as close to as like a, quote unquote professional level of play you can potentially at your store, or at least trying to like advocate for that, makes it better for like every player, right? So like you're counting your cards, we're doing zone drafting, we're keeping table talk to like appropriate levels and appropriate subject matter, because not only does that make it easier for new players to enjoy that experience, it makes it so your more veteran players can maybe get the most out of the draft that they need to.
Yeah, and like all these it may seem kind of rigid at a casual event to do like zones and stuff, but it just like it actually makes a casual event much better.
Yeah, and smoother.
It's just like very clear, and newer players or players that aren't quite paying attention or whatever, it just gets rid of any room for them to make a mistake or something that happened and ruin the whole thing. So it just like makes it very fluid.
Yeah, totally. And that's really what you want, because sometimes those drafts, like when a new set comes out and we're on like, draft 6 of the night, beer 12.
5.
Oh, yeah. Or beer 5 for me, beer 12 for you. We can just like sit there and start talking about some BS, and then we're like, "Oh, right, we got to like pick a card, or whatever." And that's fine for us because it's like a really close situation with really close friends, and we don't care at that point. But when you're at your like locals or a draft skirmish or something,
totally. In that situation though, we even still do zones.
Yeah, totally.
It just like keeps it clean.
Because when homie over here is drinking 12 beers, he's got
a Molten card in my Prism deck.
Oh yeah, that did happen the other day.
I still won though.
DQ'd though. Asterisks. Okay.
No, I played it against Mitch, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." It is like just disc. So then I only had a 3-card hit in that turn.
Man, that is kind of brutal. That's funny.
All the light cards look alike.
They totally do. And anyway. We digress. So basic guidelines for how to pick cards and how the flow from pack to pack goes. So mathematically, right, 3 packs, there are 15 cards in each pack. You pick 1 card from all 3 packs until they're all gone. So you get 45 cards. So the kind of math breakdown or roundabouts for this are like, I think a lot of people are wondering like, well, how many, people get nervous and like, oh, I got to really pick my hero cards or my element cards or my talent cards or whatever, and are unsure of how much wiggle room there is between all of those packs. So this is how I think of it. So you get 45 cards. And so usually and these are estimates, right? That kind of the last 3 cards of every pack might not be playable in your deck. So that leaves you like 7 to 9 cards maybe you can't play. So out of your 45, that's leaving you 36 to 38 cards you could still use. Meaning there's like roughly 6 to 8 cards you can pick during the draft to be able to have a minimum of 30. Now, I did not include equipment into this math equation, but you can suspect that, or you can assume that, 1 to 3 pieces of those are also your equipment cards. So you kind of get your slots get kind of tight, is my point.
So, of course, reps helps, and you just get more comfortable gauging this the more familiar with the set you are. But, dang, I forgot what I was going to say. Keep going.
Okay, so, the kind of wrap-up thesis of this is the early picks in pack 1 are potentially not as impactful as you think they might be, right? So you open pack 1 and you're like, wow, this is a really powerful card. It's very specific to a very specific hero. Should I pick this, or should I pick something more generic to stay open? Well, it's not going to harm you at all to pick the really specific card, because you have potentially 6 cards you can just kind of pick no matter what, right? So if it does work out that this very specific powerful card works, that's great. But you can pick it pack 1 and then also not be married to it later in pack 2 when you are like more set on your hero or talent.
Totally. And this happens all the time. It's like not a wasted pick, right? Because if you happen to be able to play it, then it's great. If you can't, it's just 1 out of 45 picks you wasted. You also don't have to face that card, played against you, right?
Yeah.
And what I was going to say earlier was that,
Gotcha.
So in between every round, like in between every pack, you're allowed to pick up the pile of cards you've picked so far and look at them. So you can keep track of how many playables you have.
Yeah.
How many aggressive cards you have, how many resource cards you have, and keep a mental note of that. Right. So it makes it a little bit easier to gauge, hate drafting something. How many, can I pick this card if I may not be able to play it, or, all these things. You are keeping track of that throughout the draft, which makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that is something I practice always. Like, I try to keep a mental note of how I think my deck is going. Like, ooh, I think in pack 1 I picked a lot of reds. But then I look through it and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I only have 4 red attacks. I definitely could pick more. And then I count how many resource cards I think I have or could play, or just maybe how many playables I have. And I just count them and I make a note of that number. And I might not remember it specifically halfway through pack 2, but I have kind of a ballpark number. If I was like, oh, well, I have 8 playables out of pack 1. Not a lot. I really got to make sure I get some playables in pack 2. And maybe I forget was it 10? Was it 7? It doesn't matter. I know that it's kind of a lowish number.
Yeah, totally. And there's a lot of things you're looking for. And like you said, I don't have a perfect memory for retaining all of this.
Yeah.
So when I look through my cards, I count them very specifically and try to remember it all, but often forget some of them. And there's all kinds of things you're looking for, like non-attack actions for chain,
right?
Or blood debt, or just in Monarch draft in general, usually want some sixers in case you face Prism. So there's all these different ratios that you'll learn. to appreciate and look for when you're constructing your deck. And then, after a while, you're like, man, I have like 8 Sixers in case I face a Prism, but they're all red, and that's like pretty good to play, but doesn't make a great deck for what I'm trying to do. So
Right.
now in this third pack, I can, maybe I'm like a little shy on blues, or maybe I just need some more, blood deck cards or whatever it is. So as you go through those packs, you'll, adjust.
Yeah. And then you might also have a plethora of cards you can play, which is totally cool. You don't have to play all of them. You can still register them, and then you can have like, some viable sideboard cards or that sort of thing that maybe like fit roles, or maybe your deck doesn't work out as well and you can tweak it a little bit with the like extra playables you have. So it's like not the end of the world. I really wish sometimes also, this sidebar, we had like, when we do these kind of lecture-based podcasts, that we had an audience so that I could then say to them like I do when I'm teaching. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah,
and then
totally.
we could get some like feedback, and then I could either go deeper or move on depending on how many kids have their AirPods in and are not listening versus how many are listening.
Totally.
Sorry, I just
Shasta, was that pretty clear cut?
good dog. Okay, so I hope that was clear. If you have any questions, please slide into our DMs or leave a comment somewhere, somehow, and we will answer it. So let's talk about what does open mean. So Isaac, tell me, what does being open in draft mean?
So being open means you still have the ability or the choice to pick any of the viable heroes or any of the heroes in that set, right? So open can take a few for it, right? Like maybe you've just picked 6 powerful generics that are functional in any deck, right? In Aria, there are no generics. So each pick is only functional in like 2, or each of the talent cards is only functions in 2 out of the 3 decks. But you can still be open, if you've picked, say you picked Oakenold, and then say you have 2 lightning cards, earth card, and an ice card. And they're all very powerful. You're still open, right?
Right.
No matter which character you choose, some of those cards will function, and you're good to go. You're doing great, right? Like early on, you want to pick powerful cards, and as you outlined earlier, you have 15 extra cards to do this with. Keeping in mind, some will be equipment. The last cards you get past might not be playable, so maybe you don't want to get that risky with it. But
Right.
when you're open, you're waiting for your signals, right?
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, totally. I think you did a great job. So just to kind of reiterate, also, open can mean kind of 2 things. Either you can pivot to any hero, or one specific talent or hero is open, right? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
Personally, right? So like you're getting the signals that, oh, Bolton, Light Warrior is super open. I should start picking those because I've done a good job remaining open in the draft by picking kind of generics and a few light cards and maybe a smattering of shadow cards, but I'm still able to pivot to that hero that is open. So just wanted to clarify that open not only means you, but also what is possible.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay.
There's also talents can be open,
Right. Yeah.
like ice is open, for example, or shadow is open.
Yeah. And so open is basically just like the signal you get seeing that the majority of a certain card pool, whether that's hero or talent, is being picked less at the table. Doesn't mean it could mean you're the only person that has the ability to pick that hero, but it might just mean that only one other person at the table is picking that hero. So in a draft, the goal, right, is to have the best deck and then beat everybody when you play them. I guess we should have said that at the top. But I thought maybe that's self-explanatory. But so to have the best advantage, you want to pick the hero or talent that is being picked by the least amount of players.
Right.
So
this is how this plays out, right?
Yeah.
With 8 players at the table, if you're playing a limited set with 4 characters, then an even distribution would be 2 people at the table will be picking 1 character, right? And that'll be true for all of the characters.
Yeah.
In Arya, there's 3 characters, so it's 3, 3, and 2.
Right.
You kind of want to be one of the 2 picking a hero.
Right.
It gets a little more complicated with different talents and stuff like that. But basically, say you're playing in a Monarch draft, right? And 6 players pick light, and only 2 players are on shadow, and then they read it right. One's on Levia, one's on chain. Those players.
This sounds familiar.
Totally. And those players reach the final, right? So those players are going to have their pick of all the powerful cards that they can play in their deck. And what's more is they're going to get past a pile, and they'll be able to pick the most powerful shadow card or the most powerful Levia card. And they're going to pass that pile on, and it's going to come back around to them, and it'll still have powerful Levia cards in it because nobody at the table is picking that. In addition to this, the 4 people that are playing Prism are diluting all the Prism cards. So all of their decks are going to be relatively weak because they've been, fighting for, all the Prism cards, which are only a quarter of the cards. Whereas
Right.
one player gets all the Levia cards, and that's like a full quarter of the cards, right?
Yep. Totally. Super clear. And then, so what it looks like in Tales of Aria and what it appears to look like in Uprising is that formula changes a little bit, like you said. So there will be the majority of players, there will be 3 players per hero and 1 pair of players on 1 hero. And that's the seat you want to try to find, but is quite difficult at times because of just the nature of draft and that sort of thing. So then you're kind of maybe banking on your talent being more open than your hero cards potentially to try to push you over, right? Mm-hmm. Which in Tales of Aria is a little different because we have each hero can take 2 talents. So you're trying to be, the Lightning Briar at the table, not just one of the Lightning Briars, or you're trying to be the Earth Briar, not just one of the Earth Briars, right?
Right. You're trying to be one out of the only 2 Briars.
Right.
Or maybe 3 Briars.
Yeah.
But if you've read it correctly, you want to be the only Lightning Briar.
Yeah.
Because maybe there's a Lexi picking some lightning, hopefully there's not another Briar, so then you get the lion's share of the lightning cards. And you're not, there's only 1 or 2 other players picking Briar cards.
Yeah, totally. And we will get kind of maybe more in depth on the 3-player draft in preparation for Uprising in part 2. Yep. But just to give you guys an idea of that. So kind of just moving down the docket. We're doing great. Yep. I'm really proud of us.
I have one little point to interject here.
I love it.
That's pretty interesting, or pretty pertinent maybe, is even at larger draft events, you play the players in your pod.
Yeah.
Right. So if a player is in a different 8-man pod and drafts a really strong deck, man, that table just let them get away with it and they have a crazy deck. You're not going to play them. You get assigned your pod based on your, current record in the tournament or whatever. And then you will draft with that pod and play within that pod so that the cards you picked and, let pass by and prayed would come back around. A little segment work in there. And and the signals you sent, you face the repercussions of that within your table. There's no like greater randomness that you have to face ever.
Right. And that kind of reminds me of a topic that's not on here, but I think is really important. There's okay, let's do it this way. Great extra tidbit. Let's take a brief break because we're drinking coffee and nature calls, and then we'll come back with sending signals, knowing what cards you need to draft, and then maybe some just like do's and don'ts for drafting. How's that sound?
It sounds just great.
Okay. See you in a second. And we're back. Weather update. It is now hailing.
Yeah, no longer sunny, hailing. That was a good break, though, to kind of collect our thoughts as well, I think.
Totally.
I hope you did the same during that. I guess you didn't really have a break.
Well, it's a place for them to be able to pause.
Yeah. Pull over, have a pee.
Yeah, totally. Put away your beer cans. Anyway, don't drink and drive. Okay, so before we get into sending signals, receiving signals, so funny, our notes say sending signals, instead of sending and receiving.
Our editor didn't proofread this.
Oh my God, Shasta.
Draft outline.
So here are some of my tips. So these are common mistakes I see people make when drafting. So first one is pack one, pick one. You open a dope class majestic. You're like, oh, this card is so good. I'm hard picking to this class now because I have this quote unquote powerful card, right? That might not be the case, right? The player before you, might be kind of cutting you off from that hero, or those cards just kind of aren't in the box, the card pool in general, to make that card viable. Maybe that class majestic in draft is maybe not that powerful, and you maybe are missing signals of what really is being open.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to keep in mind is these cards are designed for constructed and for limited.
Yeah.
Right. And limited takes a very high priority here in the draft or in the design space. But, like some majestics are just like remembrance, right?
Right.
Very powerful card. But and it can be applicable. Maybe it's in your sideboard in case your opponent's going to fatigue you. But it also shuffles your deck. So it ruins your pitch stack. It doesn't block or do anything else. If your opponent's on an aggro strategy, it's not going to have any function.
Yeah.
Right.
It's basically a cracked bobble.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
It's a yellow pitch that doesn't block.
So some majestics are very powerful in general, and some are like not very powerful in draft at all. And some are powerful in kind of a niche situation if you can get your deck to enable it in draft.
Right.
And it's important to know that just because it says majestic does not mean it's good in draft.
Yeah, totally. And it can happen later in the draft. So, for example, in my last draft of Welcome to Wraith, I was the only ninja at the table, which was pretty wild. So I got passed in, I can't remember if it was pack 2 or pack 3, McGinshy's, and I almost picked it. Like, ooh, so cool. Got allured by the majestic symbol, the shininess of it. And then I sat there for 1 second longer and went, wait a second. I really need Lord of Wind for this to be cool. So maybe I'll just pick this like extra copy of Fluster Fist or some other card I know my deck needs, a 0 cost blue or something like that over the McGincheys, because its hit effect is not really relevant and it still costs 1, I think. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it costs 1. So it doesn't really fill a lot of roles I need generally in the deck, and then isn't very powerful as a card on its own. So I passed it and picked something else that was more applicable, know. In that same draft, somebody did exactly what I said is maybe not the move to do, like opened a class Majestic, stuck with that class the whole time, and maybe they could have like filled out their deck with some cooler stuff.
Yeah. And some of these, like in our last draft, you opened a Red in the Ledger.
I did.
Which is like a very functional class Majestic and very powerful in draft that you can kind of play to its strength.
Yeah.
So it's just about knowing the cards.
Totally. Which we'll probably get into in part 2.
Yeah.
Another tip I see happening all the time is value drafting. So just drafting the cards you think are worth the most is a certain strategy, but is only really viable in like pre-releases, that's the only time you're going to get the packs before you can just like get them to open them. And if you're going to draft based on like value, I'm not going to say like ruining the draft for everybody, but it is not a winning strategy. That's for sure. And if you just want the most valuable cards, just open packs for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And to me, it just kind of takes the fun out of it. Like if you're not worried about picking for value at all, you can just relax and enjoy the game you're playing, which, just makes it a much better experience.
Totally. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule, which we were discussing during our break. Shout out to Zane. Zane posed you what question? Will you hit us with that?
What if you're in top 8 of nationals and you pretend this is in a draft in top 8, and you open a cold foil Corsham, which at the time was worth $500.
Is it like pack 3?
I don't know.
Just
this
at
was
any
a long
point?
time ago.
Let's say it's pack 3.
I just thought it was an interesting question.
Pack 3, pick 1?
Yeah, totally. If I'm happy with where my deck is, yes. If I desperately need more class reds or blues or something, I might pass it. I'm just against value drafting on principle. But, yeah, 95% of the time I pick it.
Nice.
Because $500 is pretty good.
Yeah. I'm going to abstain from answering this because this is a personal answer for every person.
Oh, okay.
So just whatever you feel like. Pack 3, top 8 of nationals, cold foil Corsham. Pick it if you got to pick it, and don't be upset with whatever you did or didn't do. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there's that.
I have a couple notes on you reminded me to remind everyone of something. You can totally, if you're at home with your buddies, you can totally draft with 4 players.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You just open half a box, still 3 packs each. Hopefully 1 player will be on each character, and that would be an even distribution. We do it all the time with 4. It works just great. You can draft with any number of players, 3 packs each player, and it works just fine. It gets a little bit harder to read signals and maybe frustrating if you're super competitive, but just casually, it's fine. It just gets a bit weirder with distribution.
Yeah, we fully recommend 4, 6, or 8. 8 is the best number for sure. Yeah. But if you're just like...
And then 4.
But if you're just like, dang, like... got some buddies, we only got 6 people, like you could still draft a box, it'd be fine.
Yeah,
totally. It doesn't open the whole thing, but
While we're interjecting our tidbits we remembered here, I would just like to point out picking equipment is excellent, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
before we move into signals and all that, in general, when you're still open, you're still trying to figure out what everybody else is picking, yada yada. Picking equipment is usually a very good choice. Some equipment's better than others, but the fact that it starts out on the board is really powerful. So, you can be like, I'm gonna pass this yellow lightning surge or whatever, maybe even red, I don't know. But you're gonna pick Mark of Lightning, and I don't know. Those are both really good cards. But in a lightning deck, Mark of Lightning is probably worth 2 damage.
Yeah.
And it's just 2 damage out on the table, which is super powerful.
Yeah.
Your opponent is starting with, say 18 life, essentially, in this scenario. Right? And all of these equipments, have a function like this that start out and they make your deck way better. You could lose the game before you see this other card you're going to get. And that said, I've picked a card over a piece of equipment plenty of times. It's situational, but just the ability may not seem that powerful, but the fact that it's always available, starting out on the table, does not dilute your deck at all, is always accessible, can't be overstated.
Yeah, I mean, you would rather have ragamuffins than not have ragamuffins.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it.
And it's a bit hard to like weigh the power of equipment sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because for like ragamuffins, not very good. But maybe you got an all red hand, you block out, you use it to fish for a blue to swing your hammer.
Yeah.
Or you want to fuse with this card, but you don't want to arsenal it or whatever.
Right.
Right. You can fish for a different card to arsenal.
Yeah.
Just the applications of equipment may surprise you.
Totally.
And win you games.
My last interjected tidbit, also name of my steak restaurant, I don't know, is forcing a hero. So only a really viable strategy early in a draft meta, right? You potentially know you're coming into like some people's like first or second draft and you've had 5 drafts and you like one particular hero, and it's only like a viable strategy in this small window of time when nobody knows what they're doing, right? But for the most part, like forcing a hero is just like not the best strategy, especially as you get with higher level players. And I totally get that you want to play the heroes you like from the sets you like. Like, I totally understand that, But if you're trying to like get better at drafting, then you need to be able to practice reading signals, sending signals, understanding what's open, and trying to be that one of 2 heroes at the table.
Yep. And we saw a good example of this in one of the in one of the callings. I think with Nom was his name, right? Who forced Oldhim every time and forced a fatigue Oldhim strategy that was not really that widely known or appreciated yet. And, he won the tournament with it. Great plan. However, roll around, a month or 2 later, there was another calling where a player won on that same strategy. And then Nationals came around. Anyway, it became the most popular draft strategy. Still very strong, even if you force it, arguably. But now there's 3 or 4 players at the table forcing fatigue Oldhim.
Right.
So the other archetypes and other characters at the table suddenly become a lot stronger because those fatigue Oldhims no longer have stacked decks, right? They're not stacked with turn timbers and everything under the sun. They, maybe you got 1 yellow turn timber because everybody else also picked the fatigue cards.
Right.
So, I think that's a good example of, yeah, it can work to force a hero for sure, but once everybody's kind of privy to that, doesn't work so well.
Yeah, totally. And practicing and getting good at sending signals, reading signals, understanding what's open is a safer, better strategy in the long term. It just takes a little bit more practice. But I mean, that's the whole name of Flesh and Blood, right? Is like, takes a bit more practice to get good at these things. Pitch stacking, understanding tempo,
Totally.
deck building. It all takes practice.
I love reading my seat and adapting and building the correct deck. I am still not a very good fatigue player, and I find it pretty boring. So I'm like unlikely to draft Earth Fatigue Oldhim still, because I'm less skilled at it and it doesn't interest me, even though I'm open to every other archetype in the set.
Right.
So yeah, it is really hard to become truly a master at every single, archetype, character, everything that you could draft.
Right.
Takes a lot of practice.
Totally does. So does reading signals. Crushing the segue. Yeah. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so this is what you got to think of. Every card you pick sends a signal to the person you pass, and vice versa, right? Every card you're being passed is, and the omission of a card is a signal being received from the person who's passing to you. So you can do things like making sure you continually pick one certain talent right away, so that hopefully the person you're passing to sees no ice cards potentially. So then in pack 2, they have maybe already lost the idea of ice is not open. I should not pick any ice cards right now in these early picks, and then pass you ice cards, right? Another element to this is that you have to look at the set as a whole and understand what cards are in it and what cards are not. So, for example, in Welcome to Wraith or Arcane Rising, we have generics and then hero cards, right? So the only way to send signals is by taking hero cards and then leaving generics. And, taking generics keeps you open, which then means that if everybody is picking generics, it means the hero cards are going to be the last ones to be picked. And then the hero cards you see the least of being passed to you is a signal saying that those heroes are no longer open. So let's say there are 5 warrior cards, or there's more warrior and guardian cards than there are ninja or brute cards. So the signals you would be receiving is that you could pivot into warrior or guardian, but people passing up to you are picking ninja and brute. Does that make sense to you, Isaac? Everything I've said? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And you will learn to identify the more powerful cards and the lack thereof, right? So, if you get past a red Weave Ice or a Soul Reaping, right? Like, these are really powerful cards, and if the people, upstream were picking Chain,
right,
they would not have passed Soul Reaping,
right.
So, whereas I don't know what's a yellow Bounding or something, like a less powerful card gets passed to you, you think, well, maybe they had a better option and picked it. They could still be in Chain. They just, they just had a better card to pick. So there are these cards that will send earlier signals, right? When there's still a lot of cards in the pack, and you'll see like, oh, red Weave Ice. Ice is open. This is the best ice card that could have been in there, right?
Right.
Unless by some craziness there was a better card. But after a few packs of this pattern, you'll be able to determine that.
Right.
And there's some sneaky ones, right? Like Fatigue Oldhim got really popular there for a minute, and like blue Earth cards.
Gone.
Right. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
like you're like, this card sucks, but
Yeah.
actually a very good card in the set because of a powerful
Right.
archetype.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was going to be another point I had is the density of reds or blues, right, is also a signal to read depending on what the set is, right? Like you said, like you could have red earth cards, but no red or no blue earth cards. And to you, you might think, oh, earth is open, I'll pick earth, right? But in reality, there is an Oldhim next to you who's just been picking blue earth cards. And so in that takes a bit of learning, right? And kind of studying of the set coming into it, but is just an example of something you could be reading and something to just think about as you're picking cards. Like, oh, and that can work out for you too. Like maybe you need a few more red earth cards or something like that because that's the deck you're drafting. But those are just kind of like, signals. But in like kind of a more, I don't know, in a different draft, right? You could theoretically believe that the omission of red talent cards means somebody is in that talent, right? Like there are no, red non-attack talent cards coming in the packs anymore. So if somebody's picking that, so maybe that talent is being picked. My point being is that you not only need to look for a card that works in your deck, but you need to just kind of give a brief summary of the cards that are still in the pack. And you can rearrange them in your hand, quickly to get kind of like a overview of what's in it. And that's like kind of a good thing to think about and a good thing to practice.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah, and so one thing you touched on earlier too is like the signals you're receiving are really important to read, because in both packs 1 and 3, you're going to be receiving cards. So as soon as you read what they don't want, you're going to be able to identify, because if they're not in light, or if they're not in ninja,
The person passing
obviously,
to you?
yeah,
Yeah.
then come pack 3, you're also going to get past the most powerful of those cards,
Right.
be able to build the strongest deck. You just, like you said, also have to remember that the signals you are sending are also really important, because sometimes it could be easy to be sitting there in pack 1, right, and thinking like, okay, lightning's really open. Nobody at the whole table is picking lightning. This is crazy. But somebody might be grabbing ice, right? So I'm gonna pick this red ice quake, right? Because I think it'll get gobbled up. But I'm gonna pass this lightning surge because I think it'll come back around, right?
Right.
And these situations are like nuanced and hard to read. But the other thing you're doing here is sending a signal to your left that lightning is open.
Right.
So that means come pack 2, when they're passing back to you, they may have read that lightning's open and they're going to be taking lightning.
Right.
Right. When you read lightning was open, so I'm going to get these harder to get cards, and I'm just going to because I know I'm going to get lightning.
Right.
But then you kind of maybe screwed yourself a little bit. Instead of reading lightning's open, I'm going to make sure that I'm also telling them lightning's open. So the whole time I get lightning, maybe you, kind of screwed yourself in pack 2 a bit.
Right.
By sending that signal. And again, you pass that red ice quake, it's going to be gone. So maybe you need it, but there's just a lot of going on there.
Yeah. There is a lot of nuance to this part of drafting, and this part takes the most practice. And so what happens if you do your darndest to read the signals, send the right signals, remain open, and you don't do it. You screw the person next to you. You don't really, because this is part of the game. You kind of hamper yourself in the meantime. It just kind of goes wrong. That's okay. It's totally okay. And it's part of learning how to draft and getting better at it. And it's not something you should be like, well, I failed and I ruined this person's experience. It's like, no way. That's the game within the game, is everybody is trying to figure out how they can have the most powerful deck, and not everybody can be the winner at the table, right? You still then have the second part of draft, which is playing the games. And you can still, like, with your mediocre deck, do above average with it just by outplaying your opponents. The day is not lost. If people are upset, then that's their issue, right? You should not be feel like you failed if you maybe misread the signals. There are 8 other people at the table trying to play draft, so totally. it's like everybody.
And this happens all the time.
All the time,
right? Like maybe somebody to your right, maybe they opened a Blood Rush Bellows or a Luminaris or something and like tried to hard pivot.
Yeah.
And that's going to change everything.
Yep.
For everybody down the line, right? And that's nothing that you did, right? It's just kind of the nature of the game. Or maybe they misread signals. So then they, say they're playing Oldhim and they thought, oh, Earth Oldhim's up, but then it wasn't. So like, I got to have a functional deck. So they pivoted to ice late, right? So now your ice is cut off. And I mean, this happens to everybody down the line, and everybody's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
So it's just part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's part of the dynamic, exciting nature of draft. So you kind of have to like embrace that.
Yep.
Right. And somebody might pivot 3 times in the game who's passing to you, right? They might pivot, send mixed signals in pack 1 and in pack 3. And you're just like, I have no idea what's going on,
And this is where like...
And you can be that player. And both things are okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no like moral code. You're not going to get... I mean, I might grumble to myself, but you're not going to get shamed for like forcing Bravo every single time. You're totally allowed to do that. This is the game.
Totally.
Yeah.
Is it the best strategy? Probably not.
Better than forcing Dory.
No way, dude. And limited, Bravo is the boogeyman.
This is where like knowing, being familiar with the set, having your reps, and being familiar with the characters and the different archetypes that are viable in draft comes in. And we'll probably cover quite a bit of this in our part 2. But just to touch on it initially, right? Because we're talking about sending signals and what happens if it goes wrong. I've been in plenty of situations where I can't figure out what's happening to my right. And then on my left, somebody's just forcing something and ignoring my signal. So like everything's going wrong. So you're just like, all right, this lightning briar deck I was building is like falling apart, all these. And then I just got to dial in. And I'm like, okay, what I still can get go again. Rosetta's really powerful, right? Like my deck's pretty bad, but I can just play into Rosetta. I have non-attack actions. I have attacks with go again. I can just like pivot my drafting and my deck strategy to this. And it's actually a viable strategy because the weapon's so good.
Right.
Right. So then, I'm like, into pack 2, pack 3, I'm just like, it's all gone south. This is what I'm doing now. Right. And just understanding what the different characters do. Like Prism plays a lot differently in draft than in CC, right? Because in draft, everybody's going to be after Sixers to pop your heralds.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have go again with them. So with Prism, kind of what I like to do a lot is I like whatever the herald is that has dominate, right? So maybe you have like two of that in your deck, right? And you're just trying to get one in soul. You make a shield, and now you have a weapon, right? And then you just protect it, swing your weapon. This is very different than the Luminaris Prism we see in Constructed. But anyway, that's just an example of how these characters behave in draft and the archetypes that are viable for them.
Totally. It's not Herald of Erudition. It is... I have to know.
Well, it doesn't matter. Oh, you're going to find out.
I have to know.
I just think that that's one of the best cards in draft because it's not a majestic, right? It's like viable to get. It enables your weapon, and then you have the best weapon in the set. So.
Gosh, what Herald is this? Why can't I think of it?
It's not that one.
Dang it. Jeez.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay. Well, sorry everybody who's yelling at us to know what Herald it is. Obviously, we don't play Prism. Okay. So, let's see. What else do we know? Did we cover this section here I have highlighted for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought.
I guess your adaptability... it becomes easier to adapt once you understand, your archetypes.
Right.
Right.
And we will break that down in part 2 on how to evaluate a set because it's going to be really important. Uprising is coming. This is the perfect time to try to evaluate all of the cards in there and try to figure out what maybe the archetypes can already be. And
we'll talk about how some cards are very functional. I just want to mention this now to get people thinking about it as they draft before that. Some cards are very powerful in general, like Red Lightning Surge. Mm-hmm. Great in Lexi, great in Briar, just great, right? Other cards, like Entwine Lightning Red, are only really great in a Lightning deck, or Weave Ice Red, very good in Lexi, whether you're Lightning or Ice, because you just like pumps for your dominated arrows. And it goes on and on.
Yeah, but, totally. Yeah, that's great.
Just understanding, the card's viability in the context of what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. So we have a few extra questions from Twitter that are listener questions that pertain to this topic. And so rather than answer them at the beginning of the pod, we're going to answer them at the end of the pod now that you, the listener, have a bit more context for what these questions are.
Yep. And we got a few questions, some of which were answered in the pod and some of which we're going to save to our second chapter in this discussion.
Yep.
But we have a couple questions here to answer. First one is from Andre Biaggi. Curious about when to first pick a specific hero card. For example, how bomby it should be over staying open. I find myself picking a great specific card and then stay a bit less open after. I'm not sure if it's correct.
Well, Andre, thank you for your question. So we kind of talked on this earlier that your first couple of picks in pack 1 can be some of the most powerful cards you see, and you can or cannot be tied to them. You have wiggle room within the draft, right? Of how many cards you can pick and then not use. So if it's pack 1 and you're like, ooh, Red Warrior's Valor, yeah, and that's like pick 1, pack 1, that's totally fine. You don't have to play Dorinthia. You know what I mean? But, late pack 2, you're unsure what hero you should have. You're in a tough spot there. And if you do get past a Red Warrior's Valor for some reason later in pack 2, then maybe that means it's going to be open and then you can pick that. Does that answer that question, or did I miss the heart of that question? I feel like I did.
I think that answers it. I think also this comes back around to in between packs, you can look at your cards and see where you're at.
Yeah.
which really helps prioritizing your picks as you move through the draft. But I was in a tournament and picked Channel Mount Heroic, pack one, pick one.
Right.
Great card. Not gonna like win me every game automatically though, right? I ended up pivoting to Lexi once I had some signals, and it was just fine. It's just 1 out of 45 cards.
Yeah.
Obviously what you don't want to be doing is picking 4 of each class card. And at that point, right, you're not picking like 4 of the majestics of each class card. You're kind of getting into the okay, maybe I shouldn't pick this red Snow Under. Right, great card, 3 for 7. Excellent for, buying 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Just two cards to swing for 7. Great card, right? But I've already picked 6 Briar cards, or
right.
whatever. And Snow Under does not make me hard pivot here.
Right.
Grab that powerful majestic first off. Who cares? Great. You don't want to play against it, but you gotta practice some self-discipline here.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah. And then if you are looking to pivot to a hero, well, you don't have to pivot to a hero based upon how quote unquote bomby the card is. You want to pivot to a hero that is open. So then you have to read the signals.
Oh yeah, that's a great example. So in our recent Arcane Rising draft, I opened
Pack
so
2.
in my second game, I read Kano, drafted it perfectly, had a powerful deck. It was great.
Yeah.
Everything went great.
Yeah.
In my first draft, I can't even remember who I was drafting, but I was not on Dash. I got past a few Dash cards and had picked a number of generics. Second pack, I opened pack 2, pick 1, an induction chamber. I don't have a lot of reps on Dash. I had never opened an induction chamber in a draft, but I had heard that this card is busted in draft, right? You get to just double pistol your opponents to death and fatigue them out or whatever. And I was pretty unsure about this plan, but kind of wanted to see if I could do it. So I hard pivoted to Dash. And it turned out I had way too many block for 2s, non-functional generics, non-functional or synergistic Dash cards in my deck, pivoting too late.
Yeah.
Right?
And you lost to the greatest Ranger player, me. And I just pitch stacked and murdered you.
Totally. My deck was just bad, and probably my play also not being very practiced on it. But that kind of shows the if I was in Dash and then pivoted and then saw the induction chamber, maybe I could make it.
Yeah.
But it was just it was too late. My deck was too bad at that point. I should have hate drafted it and then kept doing what I was doing.
Right.
Which would have been the smarter decision.
Yeah.
I was it's just I heard all the tale. It was how busted is this? And it turned out there are limits.
I think that deck was still pretty good. It just was not good enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It would have been, my deck that I had been drafting would have been better.
Yeah, totally.
Despite having that excellent item.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Great question.
Totally.
Really, really good question.
Yep.
So our second question that we're going to tackle today is from Papa Mike on Twitter. At what point in the draft do you start prioritizing your resource base?
Yeah, that is a really great question and really hard to answer because there is a lot of context that goes with it. So potentially you have a lot of resource cards already in the beginning because you've kind of stayed open. And I think, so Lexi in Tales of Aria is a great example of this. So blue arrows are the worst cards in the set, but you freaking need them. So if you kind of sniff out that Lexi's open and you're picking Lexi kind of early or, in a relative time frame, I don't know what I'm trying to say there. You don't really need to worry about picking blue arrows or resource cards, basically, because they're the worst, and everybody's going to pass them to you. You're just going to get blue arrows to fill up the holes in your resource curve.
Yep. Lexi's the best because your resource problems are just like auto solved. Like Briars are getting past blue arrows and like, ugh, God, another dead card at the end,
Yeah.
you know? But Lexi's are just getting past blue arrows. You never have to worry.
Yeah, totally. The other thing is sometimes the resource card is better than the like more powerful card based upon what you've picked previously, right? So you do have to keep your resource curve in mind. So like drafting Guardian in any set is something you have to think about because a lot of attacks cost 3 or more. So if you have picked, red attacks for a couple of picks, and then a pack comes around with a less than ideal distribution of like powerful cards, you're like, well, I could maybe make this work, or I don't know, like, do I really need another like Crush Confidence yellow or something like that? You might think about just picking a blue to just like, help yourself out later. So it really depends on the context rather than like, oh yeah, into pack 2 every time resource cards,
Yeah,
If it was, the draft would be way easier and we wouldn't have to do part 2.
totally. So yeah, it all circles back to just like familiarity with the set or knowing the characters. But yeah, like you said, if if Oldham's super open, after a while, like I don't need any more red snow unders, right? Or yellow, even worse. I need blues. I need to fill my blue quota. And this is where picking up your cards and noticing your ratios
In between packs
really is really important. Characters like Kano, like I said, I just drafted Kano and I almost didn't have enough blues because I hate drafted Arcane Barrier and I kept grabbing like red Voltic Bolts and stuff. And I knew I needed blues and I did get barely enough, but it's something to watch out for, right? Like you need blues in Kano. Some characters behave a little differently, right? Like Katsu to really function needs free blues. Right. So some of these blue generics you might get past or, might pick because, it's a resource card and it kind of functions, actually doesn't really function in Katsu like you want it to. Now it's a blue that doesn't really pitch so well. You kind of just need to play it. So that sucks.
Yeah, some blues can be bombs themselves. Like in Katsu, for example, blue wounding blow, excellent. It's free and it blocks for 3 and it's a blue.
Yep.
It's like everything you need in a blue. So like you might pick that, over, I don't know, something else.
And some characters, like Briar doesn't usually need a lot of blues, unless you're in an earth heavier deck maybe. But it's just, you might pick up your cards, look through them and be like, well, I need X amount of earth cards. I need X amount of like power cards, reds or attacks. But here, I count X so many blues and so many, I'm fine,
Right.
Just don't even have to worry about that.
Right. Totally. Great question.
Yeah, really good. And it's just so important because as you move through pack 3, being aware that like, I'm Oldham and I actually need more blues. Because otherwise you'll just have a deck with, 23 red attacks.
Yeah.
And die.
Yeah. What you don't, so like, there's no specific pack in which to pick specific cards, right? You don't want pack 3 to be the, I really need this type of card now. You need to have been thinking about that as your archetype has been developed based on the signals you're reading to see what is open as you pick cards, right? I have definitely been in the scenario where it's like, well, this deck is really good if I get the things I need out of pack 3, whether that's non-attack actions, sixers, blue cards, red cards, in a class. Very rarely does that work out.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I will, as you start moving through a pack and like the good cards that kind of get taken out, now you're kind of like, you might be in this spot where like, well, I could grab this like yellow attack that like kind of functions, or I might need, or I can like grab this good resource card that blocks for 3 and functions, and then it like opens me up to being able to like just comfortably pick those reds that are going to come pack 3. So there is like a little bit of, I don't know, like hidden value there of like, okay, well, these cards are like not really helping me out that much. I'm going to take these 2 like really good blues or whatever it is.
Right.
And then in pack 3, it's like, I don't need to pick 6 blues now. I can pick the good cards, and I only need to pick, 3 or 4 blues.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also an excellent point. Man, we're so good. All right.
I just want to draft now.
Yeah, totally. Like, okay,
When is the draft?
Month and a half to go to a new set to figure all of this out in. Shall we move on to our signature segments?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, here on the Attack Action Podcast, we love draft so much that every single episode we have a specific segment based on draft. This time it's a little different. We're coming into Pick, Pass, Pray. This is a draft scenario. I'm going to give you 3 heroes, and you're going to pick your favorite. This is basically marry, fuck, kill, but it's a draft scenario. So you're going to pick your favorite, pass one along, and then pray one comes back around.
So this is in the context of a draft still, right?
I think so. I think it's more
I'm gonna
like...
answer it in a draft scenario.
I think of it as what, in a draft scenario, or just maybe in general, which hero do you want to play the most second, and then don't care about it at all? That make sense?
Yep. Okay. So here's my pick.
Wait, we got to give them the heroes.
Oh, right.
So we're using...
I was just reading it.
We're giving you the heroes from Uprising. So our first hero is Icelander. Ooh, I should probably actually pull these up, huh? Is a
Ice wizard.
Ice wizard, or no, elemental wizard hero.
Yeah.
Has essence of ice, intellect 4, and 36 health.
Correct.
And they have a... I'm doing this off memory. Their text reads, you may play blue cards from your arsenal on your opponent's turn as though they were instants. They have to be non-attack actions.
Yep. If you play a blue striped card on your opponent's card, or a blue striped ice card on your opponent's turn, give them a frostbite.
Totally. We're really flubbing this. But then we don't know what the other ones are. So then that's hero 1. Hero 2 is Fae, which is potentially a draconic ninja. Hero 3 is Dromai, which potentially is a draconic illusionist. So Isaac, which one are you going to pick, pass, and pray comes back around?
Okay, because this is a new set and we're drafting, I'm going to pick Fae.
Okay, cool.
And I'm going to pray Dromai comes back around. Because Fae, I'm just going to come at you with an aggressive, powerful strategy while you're like fiddle fucking around with like Islander trying to work out your tempo and, rhythm and win condition. And I'm just going to like catch you up.
Sweet.
Yep. My real pick, though, out of the characters is Dromai.
Surprise Uprising pick.
Because...
From the shadows.
I don't know. She's like a, dangerous, powerful dragon lady, which is like probably going to get me killed. And I've like, it's cool.
Well, what's cool is picking Islander first. That's my pick. Because I want to stop you dead in your tracks, frozen like an ice cube for all time, where you slowly die as you watch me walk away and win because you're frozen in an ice cube.
Brain shutting down
Yeah.
as you just watch
Yeah, totally.
Islander stroll off into the blizzard.
But then my one I hope comes back around is Faye. I think that this hero is going to have like some sort of graveyard recursion or some sort of graveyard play with their cards or something. I don't know. I also just really like phoenixes. I think that is like a really cool mythical creature. So that's what I'm going with. Dromai is, mother of dragon stuff, overplayed. Seen it in pop culture too much recently. Dragon Lady, I'm over it.
Fair enough. I also actually really like Islander. I've just played a lot of ice in the past long time. So maybe I've had my fill for the moment.
For
it's
me,
the only reason I'm moving on to the dragon,
Yeah. For me, I have had Ice Envy and Wizard Envy for a while and haven't been playing either really, even though I've been wanting to. I just haven't had the time between competitive testing and stuff to kind of try to hone my skills with the ice or more magical heroes. And in this new set, Islander is it's my time to get to do both. Two birds, one stone.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next segment, Game from the Closet. Here at the Attack Action Podcast, we love to play many games, board games, card games, not just flesh and blood. We love sports, drinking beer and playing disc golf, whatever it is. Any game under the sun, you name it, we love it. But some games are especially close to our hearts, and we like to share them with you sometimes and hope that you will enjoy one too. Them too. I switched. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
This pod's game from the closet is Taylor's pick.
Thank you, Isaac. So I recently have upgraded my personal computing hardware. So now I am a part of the future and can play modern video games on a PC. So that is how I have been spending my free time, this is kind of a long game from the closet. Because I've recently found...
It's part of every game.
Yeah, totally. I've found that I would really like to play video games again, and I'm doing so, but I have to do so in a manner that is very structured. So it's I have 2 hours right now, and I'm going to do that playing video games. And it actually has made myself way more productive, because before I sometimes get in the habit of all right, 2 hours of free time, here we go. And I kind of just like you like to say, fiddle fuck around. And I don't really feel like I've accomplished free time stuff. You're just on the couch looking on the internet, and then you're I don't know, make a sandwich. And then you try to watch a new show, but they all suck. So you don't feel like you get anything accomplished. And you're well, I really haven't had any free time. I'm going to continue to try to free time. And then 2 hours turns into 3 hours. And then maybe it's 3.5. And you're crap, now I have less time to do the stuff I actually need to do.
Yeah, you're I should be productive and I should enjoy my free time at some point. So let's do those things.
Yeah. So video games have been allowing me to have structured free time that accomplishes something, right? Because I'm getting farther in the story or whatever. So I just recently finished Pillars of Eternity, which is from 2015. Not really that modern, but is a Pillars of Eternity is kind of not a love story, but a homage to 90s isometric role-playing games on PC.
Yeah, they call that a love letter, don't they?
Oh, love letter. That's
what
I said.
They say?
I
Maybe
thought
that's
I
why
said.
you thought of that.
What did I say?
Love story.
Love story. Oh yeah. So that's what it is. So it's very much based off of Dungeons and Dragons. So you make your own character from scratch, and you give them all these different stat bonuses and pick talents and a class and a race, and then you get these party members that have their own story and things their own ambitions and such, and they level up. And so, it's this whole role-playing experience where you're a part of this story. Now, was it a great game? No, not really. It like falls short in many places, specifically storytelling, but it hit me right in the nostalgia where I was like really happy to be a part of a bigger story, be leveling up my cool druid character that wild shaped into a freaking werewolf, and then also called down lightning from the freaking sky and hurled boulders at trolls and shit. It was just a ton of fun. And if you are a fan of Baldur's Gate or Planescape Torment, or maybe even the Dragon Age games, like this party-based, story-driven, deep lore, lots of reading RPG is really good. For me, as a person who has been outside of like modern video gaming for quite a while, getting to play something where I have a pause button all of the time to use, and there's kind of like a lot of reading for me to get invested into the story rather than like a lot of playing, was kind of like really nice for these previous like rainy days we have had, and to like get back into this hobby of mine that I have missed. So really brought me back to days of high school where you just like wake up at noon, eat 3 bowls of cereal, play video games for 4 hours, eat another 2 bowls of cereal, go outside for some reason because you think it's healthy, go back inside and play video games until the wee hours. Rinse and repeat summer vacation.
Like our buddy Michael and I we'd go like play one-on-one basketball in my yard for a few hours, or because you like have to, and then go back to like taking turns playing, whatever it was at the time.
Oh, totally.
Diablo or Warcraft, or
with the same friend, I've stayed up until dawn playing Diablo 2 together.
Hey, I did not know you were doing this, and I just Googled it, and PC Gamer gave it a 92. So apparently it hit them right in the nostalgia as well.
Yeah, totally. That's funny. I wondered what you were typing over there.
Oh, yeah. I was checking out this game you're recommending.
Yeah, totally. It's really fun. It's really cool. Apparently the expansion, which I'm about to embark on, has a much better cohesive story that makes it a little bit more enjoyable. But if you would like it because there's a shit ton of micromanaging and nitty gritty and strategy.
Shopping.
Yeah, there's a shit ton of shopping and like kind of obtuse ways to know if things are better, and trial and error and stuff, and
that's
lots
cool.
of tactics,
I did not really love Diablo 2 because the amount of like running and clicking. There's a lot of clicking.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe this was not for me. But if there's a lot of like deck building or whatever, I'm into it.
Yeah, there is a lot, and you can respec any of your characters at any time. So if you can,
cool.
It allows you to try out a lot of things, and then be like, that's not working. Switch it up. And then, the placement, where your characters are on the battlefield matters, and area of effect spells and stuff. There's a lot of tactics involved.
Cool.
Once you get into combat, it's much more like kind of a miniatures war game. Mm-hmm. And all of your miniatures can do their own thing, but they're also stupid, so you have to micromanage them, kind of, So
yeah.
I know that doesn't sound fun, but it is fun.
No, that sounds fun.
Yeah, totally.
I love dry strategy.
You love minutia. More minutia, please. Okay, so that's my game from the closet. Long-winded, but here we are.
Love it.
Totally. Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here, my good sir?
Nope. We have a bunch more on the docket for next time to really dive into the nitty-gritty and the minutia of draft.
Yeah. Good. That reminds me. So our next episode of the reaction step will be coming after the Pro Tour about the Pro Tour. Then,
oh, yeah. So if you normally just listen to our podcast and you're like, they didn't even talk about the Pro Tour at all. We're going to, in depth, give you all of our takes and reactions and, like talk about only the Pro Tour for over an hour with Colin on the reaction step.
Exactly. So look forward to that on YouTube exclusively. Then at the end of this month is May, we're having Tommy Fresh on to chit chat about the Pro Tour and his experience hanging out at the Calling and being in Jersey, being from Jersey, being a cool bud, etc. So you have that to look forward to. Then at the beginning of June, the final preparations have begun for Uprising. That's where you're going to get Draft Part 2. So you have time to practice, think about some more things, and then come back and join us for Part 2 in June.
Yep. And obliterate your armories.
Hell yeah. All right. With that, let's get out of here. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the Attack Action Podcast. On Twitter, we are at BattleBroTaylor and at BattleBroIsaac. Shoot us an email, theattackactionpodcast@gmail.com.
If you would like to support us, like and subscribe, shop for singles using our affiliate link, or support our Patreon for as little as $4 per month.